Hey, Motorman here. We had a very interesting class this past Sunday. We had some riders that had extremely low fear level, took direction very well, and we had some riders with average fear level, and one particular rider who's I found out later on uh, that he just got out of the Motorcycle Safety Foundation basic course, said he had been riding for years though prior to that, uh, and didn't do very well. In fact, we had to stop him. Now, this young lady coming through here is her first time. She's on the perfect bike for a beginner rider or a re-entry rider. That's a Kawasaki Vulcan 650. She's very low fear level. And here comes our rider just fresh out of MSF course, but had been riding for years prior to that. He wanted to rent the Road King because that was closest to the bike he just bought, which is an Electroglide. As you can see, didn't do very well on the Road King. Had no conception of using the friction zone or turning his head and eyes, and really wound up dropping the motorcycle immediately, just going so slow, then pulled in the clutch, the bike tips over. Later on, I try him out on a Sportster mid-sized bike, seeing if that would help. It did not help at all, and actually had to stop him before he burned out the clutch because he was revving the motor so high that clutch wasn't going to last throughout the class. You start revving the motor at 4,000 or 5,000 RPM, and that's how you burn out a clutch. Now, this rider's on a Goldwing, and I found out at the end of the class the Goldwing has a car tire in the back. Now, car tires, that's the last thing you should do with your motorcycle. It makes it extremely difficult to lean the bike. The tire makes you fight the lean the entire time. Here's our rider on the Fat Boy, swinging and swaying, dipping that motorcycle. That's what this exercise is for. It gets you dipping that bike, and that dipping motion makes everything you do at low speed so much easier. And once again, we have our no fear female rider. Second time through, just dipping that bike really well, leaning, turning her head and eyes. On the perfect bike for the perfect rider who wants to really pick up her skills. Here's our MSF graduate once again, giving her a try on the Road King. And yeah, he didn't get any better. I didn't get any films of him on the Sportster, but believe me, it was no better than this. This exercise, we see the female rider just zipping through it like nothing, using all the techniques, using all the space available. By this point, we're about 35-40 minutes into the class, and all the riders are showing great improvement. This rider had a bit of a fear of leaning the bike and had some problems with or staying in the friction zone, but he's already getting better. And there's our Goldwing rider with the car tire on the back, struggling because that bike does not want to turn when you got a car tire on it. He has to ride out of the exercise. Believe me, folks, you might save a few bucks and get some more mileage out of a car tire, but they're not designed for motorcycles. This rider's doing pretty well. A little slow, but that's quite common. If he picked up the speed, it'd make things a lot easier. Turned his head a little bit faster and further, and it would all come together. Now we move on to the intersection, and I'm having the riders do circles in two of the legs of the intersection. This rider's on an 800 Suzuki. It's a very good, easy to ride, mid-sized motorcycle. And by the way, this rider is over 70 years old, and he's just getting back into riding. And he picked probably one of the best bikes you can for that purpose. Not too small, not too big. My only problem with these bikes is ABS is not available, even on the brand new ones. This one's a couple of years old, but ABS is a lifesaver. If you're going to get a mid-sized bike as a re-entry rider, beginner rider, or really anybody, I wouldn't get a bike without ABS. Here's our fearless female, just tearing it up, no fear at all. Circles are perfect. My only fault with her is she's tends to lean with the motorcycle. At low speeds, you want to counterbalance. You want to put your weight on the high side of the bike. I explained that to her after watching this.
Kawasaki 650.
And it is instinctual to lean with the motorcycle, and that's okay at high speeds. Any speed above 20 miles an hour, you can lean with the motorcycle as long as your head is level with the horizon. Here's our Goldwing rider who's really getting the hang of it now, despite that car tire, which is making everything much more difficult for him. He's now got a pretty good handle on the friction zone,
Give me that circle.
putting the right amount of rear brake pressure.
Turn your head.
And I'm
Turn your
urging
head.
him to turn his
Go
head,
where you
because
wanna go.
when you're making circles, there's no straight part to a circle. Should keep your head looking over your left shoulder
right.
the entire time you're making a left circle. Here's our fearless rider on the Fat Boy, and I told him I wanted to hear those boards scraping. As soon as I said that, he put it right on the boards. You want to find your bike's lean limits here under controlled conditions. We've now moved on to the figure eight. These are two 24-foot circles. And a lot of times this scares the riders because there's so many cones in a confined area. This rider's doing okay, needs to turn his head a little bit faster. Again, that's very common, not to turn your head fast enough. I'm gently reminding him to do so. Keep in mind, I'm not yelling at the riders, I'm yelling so they can hear me. It's not yelling because I'm mad at them. If I speak the way I'm speaking now into this microphone, they wouldn't be able to hear a word I said. Trick to the figure eight is to focus on that crossover point. That's right in the middle where the two circles intersect. This rider really improved. Granted, he could pick up his speed, but this is his first time through the figure eight. With a little more practice, get his speed up to about 10 miles an hour, it'd be perfect. But he's got a good handle on the clutch and throttle. Could bring his revs up just a bit. Knows how to use the rear brake and turn his head and eyes, and easily makes it through. By this point in the class, this is probably about 3 hours into it, the riders have a pretty good idea that they know for sure what the techniques are. It's just a matter of using the techniques now to the extreme. Use the techniques a little bit, you'll be a little bit better rider. Use the techniques to the extreme, and you'll be riding like a pro in no time. Again, our fearless female,
Back over there where you knocked that one over.
whipping that bike around. The perfect bike for her size and her skill level. I highly recommend the Kawasaki Vulcan 650. That's a sport bike motor, so it's got plenty of power for around town or even out on the highway. Well, that's it for now, folks. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon.